What is a rabbi? And can you trust just any rabbi you find here on YouTube? Is a rabbi just a Jewish version of a priest? What does the title rabbi actually mean? And how do you know if someone calling themselves a rabbi, especially here on YouTube, is genuinely qualified and trustworthy? In this video, I'll break down what a rabbi is and what a rabbi is not. I will also be discussing the different types and levels of rabbis in Judaism and some of the red flags to watch out for before you decide to follow or learn from just any rabbi, especially here on YouTube. This topic is crucial, especially for those that are new to Judaism, or in the conversion process to Judaism, or for those that are Balei Tshuva, those returning to their Judaism. Like many of you watching this video, I began my journey into Judaism in 2011. I started an official Orthodox conversion program into Judaism in 2012, and Baruch Hashem, I completed my conversion to Orthodox Judaism in 2017. In 2019, I made the decision to make Aliyah, to return to Israel, and I have been living here ever since. Baruch Hashem. In my early days, when I was still very new to Judaism and looking for information online, I watched many videos by so-called YouTube rabbis, and like many, I assumed anyone with a title rabbi was equally trustworthy. Later, however, I realized that this isn't the case at all. Many of those rabbis I followed didn't have the proper hashkafa, the proper Jewish way of belief, or very simply, they were not very well grounded in authentic Torah tradition. Now, why does this all matter? Choosing the wrong rabbi to learn from can cause spiritual harm, confusion, and a lot of wasted time. And that is exactly why I am making this video, to help you understand who a rabbi really is and how to know who to trust and who to be cautious of. I will also be releasing more videos where I will recommend specific rabbis that I personally know, trust, and learn from. I've also made a list of specific rabbis in each area of Judaism, namely Hashkafa, which is the proper way of Jewish belief based on tradition and authentic Judaism. Torah, the weekly Torah portion or parasha, as well as insights on this Torah portion. Halakha, Jewish law and daily practice, basically the way we live as Jews every single day. And Gemara, and advanced learning to train you to think like an Orthodox Jew. So be sure to subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Also click the bell notification button below to be notified when I do publish those videos. So what is a rabbi? The word rabbi comes from the Hebrew word rav, meaning master or teacher. Rabbis often serve in roles like leading synagogue services, for example, teaching Torah and Jewish texts, providing spiritual guidance and counseling, officiating in Jewish life cycle events like weddings, funerals, lo aleinu, and bar and bat mitzvahs. And some rabbis also rule on matters of Jewish law. Being a rabbi is not a priesthood or divine appointment. Rabbis are ordinary people that get married. They have families. They have struggles and tests. And they sin and repent like any of us. So how do you become a rabbi exactly? To become a rabbi, you typically go through a structured process of intensive Jewish study, practical training, and ordination, called in Hebrew shmicha. The exact path varies depending on the type of rabbi, and there are various levels of rabbis, which I will discuss later in this video, which is critical to understanding who a rabbi is and who a rabbi is not. But here are the general steps to become a rabbi. First of all, you need formal rabbinic study. For this, you need to enroll in a rabbinical school, which is called a yeshiva or a kollel. This can be either full-time or, in some cases, part-time. Now, the typical coursework includes the Torah, which is the first 5 books of Moses, with its various commentaries. A rabbi also needs to know the Talmud, which is the Jewish oral law, which is vast. A rabbi also needs to know halakha, which is Jewish law, or the way we live as Orthodox Jews, and the way we as Orthodox Jews observe the commandments, which is critical in living an authentic Jewish life. A rabbi also needs to know philosophy and ethics, as well as Hebrew and Aramaic. The rabbi also needs to know about community care and counseling. So, how long does it take to become an Orthodox rabbi? It normally takes about 4 to 7 years of full-time Torah learning to become an Orthodox rabbi. To become a Chabad rabbi, however, and you will find many of them here on YouTube, is a much quicker process. And you can become a Chabad rabbi in as little as 1 to 2 years of full-time learning. This sometimes leads to concerns about the depth and the breadth of knowledge of Chabad rabbis. And that is why many general Orthodox Jews do not follow the opinion of Chabad rabbis. The second step is shmicha, in English translated as ordination. At the end of your studies, you are formally ordained as a rabbi. In Orthodox Judaism, this involves rigorous exams on Jewish law, especially on the Shulchan Aruch. In Chabad, shmicha reflects practical readiness for community leadership, or shlichot, as it is called in Hebrew, which basically is sending out Chabad emissaries all over the world and establishing the very popular Chabad houses. So what are the different levels of rabbis in Judaism? In Judaism, there is a general rule that each generation is weaker than the previous generation. Thus, in Judaism, a modern rabbi like Rabbi Manis Friedman cannot challenge a rabbi that is higher than him in the generations, unless he can bring a rabbi in that same generation or that same layer or group that supports his position. And this is very important for the chain of Jewish tradition. To use another example, let's say I disagree with Rashi. This is a rabbi that lived 1,000 years ago, a Rishon. In Orthodox Judaism, it would mean absolutely nothing to any Orthodox Jew unless I can bring another rabbi that lived in a similar time period or higher in the Jewish tradition that also differed with Rashi. Rabbis like Ramban, Nachmanides, or Rambam, Maimonides, which also lived about 1,000 years ago and are also Rishonim. If I can bring one of these rabbis, like the Ramban or like the Rambam, that also challenges Rashi, who I disagree with, then my position will stand. If not, my position will be discarded. This is why you will often hear Orthodox Jews say in an argument or in a discussion, "What is your source?" or "Show me your sources." Because we need to know, where did you get that idea from? And if you have no sources that you can bring, then your claim is basically discarded. If you do have a source, this source is evaluated by the person that said it and how many people agreed with that opinion. Or was it a das yachid, a single opinion with no other support for that opinion? And that is why it's very important to understand the different layers in Jewish tradition of rabbis. Currently, we are in the period of the Achronim, which means the last ones, which is the bottom layer of our tradition. Here's a quick overview of the layers of rabbis in our tradition, starting at the very top and moving down the chain of tradition. Remember, each layer is higher than the next layer. At the very top, 3,400 years ago, is Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, from the Torah, from the Bible. Moses got the Torah straight from God, and God says there will never be anyone greater than Moshe. This is also one of the 13 principles of the Jewish faith. In the second layer is the Judges, starting 3,400 years ago with Joshua and ending 2,700 years ago. And you can find references to all these judges in the Tanakh, in the Bible. The third layer is the prophets, starting 2,700 years ago and ending 2,300 years ago. References to all the prophets can also be found in the Tanakh, or the Bible. The fourth layer is the Tanaim. The Tanaim started 2,300 years ago and ended 1,800 years ago, and thus lived during the time of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, which, please God, will soon be rebuilt. References to the Tanaim can be found in the Jewish oral law, which today is the Talmud, and the Tanaim is mentioned in the Mishnayot, which is written in Hebrew, and the discussions on the Mishnayot is called the Gemara, and this is written in Aramaic. The fifth layer is the Amoraim, starting 1,800 years ago and ending 1,500 years ago. References to the Amoraim can be found in the Jewish oral law, in the Talmud, in the section that is written in Aramaic called the Gemara. The sixth layer is the Savuraim, starting 1,500 years ago and ending 1,300 years ago. References to the Savuraim can also be found in the Gemara. The seventh layer is the Gionim, starting 1,300 years ago and ending 950 years ago. And the references to the Gionim can also be found in the Gemara, as well as in various other works. The eighth layer is the Rishonim, starting 950 years ago and ending 400 years ago. References to the Rishonim can be found in various Jewish commentaries, especially on the Torah, like Rashi, Ramban, Nachmanides, the Ibn Ezra, just to name a few. Now, both Rashi and Tosafot, which is Rashi's grandsons, can also be found on the sides of the central text in the Talmud, the Jewish oral law, which is the Mishnah and the Gemara, and on the sides you have Rashi on the one side and Tosafot on the other side. And currently we are in the final layer called the Achronim, which translated means the last ones. And this started 400 years ago and it's still going on until today. So how do we look and assess the validity of a rabbi's opinion today? Today there's also different layers of rabbis. And here's a brief breakdown from the top to the bottom of the different layers of rabbis today. The top layer of rabbis today and the most respected rabbis in the world are called Gadol Ladors, which is translated as the giants, Gadol, Lador, of the generation. They are generally very old and spend all their time learning Torah, answering questions on Jewish law, and ruling on modern day Jewish issues. Rabbis that makes a pasak, a ruling on modern day Jewish issues, and issues modern day Jewish law are called poskim. Now, we discussed how to become a rabbi. So how do you become a Gadol Lador, a giant of the generation? This is not something that you can study for or apply for, but you are given this title by the Orthodox Jewish world due to your vast knowledge of Torah Kula, the entire Torah. Examples of Gadol Ladors that you might have heard of is rabbis like Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, Zatzal, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Zatzal, the Stipler, Zatzal, who was also the father of Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, Zatzal, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, Zatzal, and my rabbi's rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zatzal, just to name a few. The next layer of rabbis today is Rosh Yeshivas. These are rabbis that are the heads of a yeshiva, which is where the Rosh comes from. The bigger the yeshiva, the more respect and prestige for a particular Rosh Yeshiva. The next layer down is a Rosh Kollel. These are rabbis that are the heads of a Kollel. The bigger the Kollel, the more respect and prestige for the Rosh Kollel. And finally, the next and final layer at the very bottom of the list of rabbis is rabbis of communities, synagogues, and YouTube rabbis. Now, obviously, some of these rabbis in this final layer of rabbis are excellent and does great work. Others, not so much. And now a quick word on rabbis here on YouTube, especially on Chabad Rabbis. Many of the most popular rabbis on YouTube are from Chabad, and this is no coincidence. Chabad excels in outreach and communication. They are relatable and engaging. However, general Orthodox Jews do not follow Chabad opinions, and there are big theological and halachic differences between general Orthodox Jews and Chabad. Now, the pros of Chabad rabbis is that they are excellent at outreach. They're also very good at storytelling. Now, here are some cons of Chabad rabbis. Chabad rabbis often lack in-depth halachic discussions, as they often focus more on Chassidut or mystical teachings such as Kabbalah, rather than practical Judaism that is rooted in all these layers of Jewish tradition. But the biggest con of Chabad rabbis is many Chabadniks, unfortunately, believe that the Rebbe, their last Rebbe, that died in 1994 is either still alive, meaning he never died, even though he has a grave in New York City where they go to pray at his grave, meaning to say that they believe that that is his resting place. Some Chabadniks takes it a little bit further and say, yes, he died in 1994, that is why there is a gravesite in New York City, but they employ a Christian teaching, a Christian theory, a false theory that doesn't exist in Judaism, saying that yes, the Chabad Rebbe, the last Chabad Rebbe, didn't fulfill all the things that the Mashiach must do, but guess what? He will do it when he comes back. And then there's unfortunately Chabadniks that goes even another step further, saying, again employing a Christian theory, which again does not exist in Judaism, where they say that the Chabad Rebbe, the last Chabad Rebbe, is God in a body. Chas ve shalom. God forbid. But this is what they are saying. And I have plenty of videos about Chabad on my channel, which I will link for you at the end of this video. And this is why many general Orthodox Jews stay away from Chabad or anything that Chabad puts out there. Now, by that, we are not saying that all Chabadniks or all Chabad rabbis believe in these false, heretical beliefs. We are not saying that. But we can no longer know which is which is old school Chabad, meaning that they are still very much Orthodox Jews, but they follow Chabad Chassidut, and who is the new school Chabad, meaning that they believe that the Rebbe is either God, Chas v'shalom, God forbid, or that he died and is coming back, a second coming, doesn't exist in Judaism, or they're saying he never died, even though they go to his grave to pray. These are called yellow flags or yachiniks. And unfortunately, we can no longer tell who is who. And thus, always when we as Orthodox Jews are in doubt in what to do, we side on the side of caution. And we say, let's rather listen to no Chabad rabbi, because we cannot know if this rabbi is a yachinik or not. And my personal belief about Chabad rabbis here on YouTube, and the reason that they are so popular, is because they have a huge Christian following. Because a lot of what they are putting out there is very similar to Christianity. And thus there is a certain affinity between Chabad and Christians. And this is why you will see popular YouTube rabbis are normally Chabad rabbis. Rabbis like Rabbi Manis Friedman, Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Now, if you are someone new to Judaism, or you are someone returning to your Judaism, and you are seeking serious halachic guidance or Jewish learning, I would advise you to not follow any Chabad rabbi for all the reasons that I've already mentioned in this video. And before trusting any rabbi, especially online, always first ask, do they cite sources? And do they cite these sources from the Shulchan Aruch, which is the codified book of Jewish law, or from the Talmud, the Jewish oral law, or straight from the Torah? Ask yourself, are their teachings aligned with mainstream Jewish halakha and hashkafa? And this is a very important point, because you will see a lot of these popular YouTube rabbis say things that has never been said in Judaism before. And I've already listed you the long chain of Jewish tradition. Rabbis, for example, like Rabbi Manis Friedman, who has come up with this idea that God needs us, which is a completely crazy idea that is without sources. And that is why he's being challenged by so many Orthodox rabbis. Also, another point that this highlights is that obviously he believes he is smarter than all the rabbis that came before him, since no other rabbi in our very long chain of tradition has ever pushed this idea that God needs us. On the contrary, we have always been told in this very long chain of Jewish tradition that God does not need anything. He does not need us. He does not need anything. So with this statement that Rabbi Manis Friedman is making, he is basically saying that I, Rabbi Manis Friedman, knows better than the Ramchal, who clearly states that God does not need anything. He's saying that he, as Rabbi Manis Friedman, knows better than the Rambam, who lived 1,000 years ago and was not just a rabbi that wrote many works, including a whole collection on Torah law called the Mishneh Torah, but also was a very renowned philosopher. So if you hear anything that is not mainstream, a new idea that one of these modern YouTube rabbis come up with, always check that there is a chain of tradition that supports these opinions. So it's very important to know that a rabbi is not just a Jewish priest. He's a teacher, a mentor, and a link in this unbroken chain of Jewish tradition. But titles can be very misleading, and not everyone that represents themselves as a rabbi is always a rabbi. So choose carefully, learn deeply, and always ask, where is this teaching coming from? What is the source? And in my upcoming videos, I'll share my recommendations for trusted rabbis in Torah, Halakha, Ashkafa, and many more other areas in Judaism. So give this video a like if you benefited from this video, so that this video will spread to a wider audience. Also, leave me a comment below if you have a question or want help in finding solid guidance. And if you have more Jewish questions, then watch this playlist next, which is dedicated to answering modern day Jewish questions based on solid Jewish Orthodox tradition. Thank you all for watching, and Yom Tov.